Hi guys, welcome back to the Possible Blog. Those are my dogs in the background also greeting you. Hopefully everybody had a great Christmas and is surviving Corona 2022. We're hanging out here at Possible, still doing the Possible thing. The only thing we've limited is going into schools with our therapy dogs. We're trying either to not do that or not do that as much. So yeah, things are interesting. I wanted to talk to you today about what makes possible difference. There has been an increase in trainers in our area. So I wanted to take a minute and just educate people as to what dog training is, what are the requirements for being a dog trainer, some of the philosophies behind it, as well as, where possible falls in all of that. So this might be a little bit longer video, but bear with me. I think you'll find it quite interesting. So let's start with trainer education. In the US and virtually every other state, except I think New Hampshire, there is not any requirement as to who can call themselves a trainer. So anybody who owns a dog or has knowledge of a dog, grew up with the dog, could, in theory, hang their shingle out there and say, hey, I'm a dog trainer, hire me. Does that make them good? No. Does it make it right? No. But it is the way it is. So in short of politicians deciding that that's a big deal, we have to roll with it. What are some things that you can look for in terms of finding a good trainer? So there are things out there called certifications for dog trainers, and they're really about a dime a dozen. Most of the dog training certifications out there are focused on what's called NEMA, least invasive, minimally adversive, which means that those trainers subscribe to the theory that they're going to use the least invasive method to train your dog and the least adversive method to your dog to train your dog. So for instance, that does not exclude the use of choke, prongs, e-collars. Even e-collars on vibration can be adversive for some dogs, can frighten the dickens out of them. They can use things like tugging on a leash. They can use, things that wind up in the wrong hands, actually hurting your dog. E-collars will always hurt your dog. That is my theory. That is my philosophy. It's backed up by science, and I can send you that information if you want to read the research studies surrounding it. But choke collars, prong collars also have the ability to hurt your dog, as well as the gentle leaders or the halty collars around their muzzle. If used incorrectly, those can hurt your dog. So, there's lots of potential there for an uneducated trainer to do things incorrectly and wind up causing harm, or, God forbid, a mental illness to your dog. Nobody wants that. There's just trainers out there who don't know better, so they don't do better. We have a saying in the dog training world: the amount of force used on a dog is inversely proportional to the amount of education the trainer has had. Again, I'm not saying that there are bad trainers out there, although yes, there are. I am just saying that there are uneducated trainers out there. So you need to take your time, slow down, don't rush into hiring a trainer, don't fall for some massive sales pitch, do your education, do your background research, and make sure you're hiring the right trainer for you, because not every trainer is going to be the trainer for you. So that brings me to different camps of trainers. There is, we'll call them the traditional trainers. Those are the trainers that you're going to find probably have canine in their name. They are they'll spout the dominance theory, which has been disproved. And the actual author of it actually came out and said that his research was false. They will use tools, whether they are choke collars, prong collars, e-collars, head halters, you name it. They will use tools. They will use scare tactics as training tools. Shake hands are a good one. That's a big no-no, or at least in my point of view, that's a big no-no. They will, there's a plethora of things out there. Those guys just don't subscribe to the newer methods of training. And then you have the middle camp. The middle camp tries to blend traditional with the newer method, the very, very newer methods, the research-backed methods. And they will say that, because you have to bear in mind that everybody is trying to keep their livelihood without doing a whole lot of education. So they're stuck in the mode of the old school versus the new school, and they're trying to blend them to make their school work, because they understand that the new school is probably the way to go, but the old school is very easy and provides quick results. So they try to blend them and make a merriment out of them. It doesn't always work. Has some of the same pitfalls as traditional training. And so while under the right guidance of a trainer, it can be great to an extent. You still have to be wary of those trainers. And then you have the newer camp. You could call them R positive, you could call them force free, which are two different things, but kind of stay in the same camp together. And basically what they do is they take the research-backed studies of how dogs learn, dog psychology, how to further the bond between human and animal. And they say, okay, these are the training methods we know work based on what we know of dogs. They're not going to use things like shock collars, prong collars, choke collars, although you may find some R positives that do. They're going to be very heavy treat motivated at first, and as soon as they know that the dog has learned the concept, they will start to wean the dog off those treats. There's a very big difference between bribing a dog and rewarding a dog. And they never want to bribe the dog, because then you don't get away from the treats. So where does plausible fall in all of that? Well, first of all, our trainers, we look at the background of our trainers. And in order to be a plausible trainer, you have to have documented so many hours of education. And we actually require our trainers to do 20 hours of CEU credits a year so that they stay on top of things. You know, science is just now catching up with dog training, and new things come out all the time. So we don't want something to slip by us and we not know about it. Not to mention the fact that when you build a community of trainers who all share the same philosophy of training, you create this mind hive, and you can throw things at the board and say, what do you think? And you get feedback about how they handled this in the past, or here's some ideas, or you're looking at the picture too big, break it down smaller. All those things happen. So the education that we do is all from trainers who train our way. And there are some big names out there. Susan Clothier, is one. Karen Pryor is one. Linda Michaels is another one. I'm trying to think of some big authors out there. Let me look at my bookshelf. Sophia Yen, Patricia McConnell. Those are all some names that you could actually go out and type into Google and read about what they think and how they train, and compare that to what your trainer is telling you. This is like, dog training is like sending your kid off to school. You don't want to get a bad teacher for your kids, because they're not going to learn what they need to learn, or they're not going to learn it correctly, or it's going to cause anxiety if they start learning, in a bad atmosphere. Dogs are exactly the same way. They're very susceptible to the same things that a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old is susceptible to in like preschool or kindergarten. That's where their mindset kind of is. Some dogs are a little younger, some dogs are a little older. So there's a wide range of mental capabilities in a dog. And you want to be cognizant of what your dog does, and where your dog can perform in all of that, because you don't want a cookie cutter trainer, a dog trainer that can't train to the dog that's in front of them, instead of like, this is how we do it, so this is how we do it for all dogs, because that doesn't work. Dogs are individuals and they have personalities, and so we have to train to those individual personalities. The way we train also strengthens the bond between the dog or dogs and their human. It can help in some cases alleviate anxiety. It can create a situation where the dog, instead of taking manners into their own hands, looks back to their owner and says, what do you want me to do here? Is this okay? Is this what we're supposed to be doing? And that gives the owner the opportunity to say, yeah, or no, I need you to do this instead. So it fosters that bond. Again, going back to that, preschool age child, it's the same concept. You don't want your 3-year-old running off in the road, so you have to teach them, don't run off in the road. Dogs are the same way. They learn much better and much quicker if it is a friendly atmosphere versus an atmosphere that's based in fear. I have a saying, it's much easier to teach a dog what to do than what not to do. So that is how we train, literally. It also creates in our dogs a love of learning. So our dogs have a continuation of wanting to learn new things and wanting to explore new things and being like, what's going on today? What are we doing today? You see an excitement in them, a zest for life in them that you don't see with a dog that is trained with a fear-based method or a traditional-based method. They're much more worried about, am I doing this wrong? Versus, let's go explore. Let's go learn something today. You see two totally different dogs when you're trained in those different ways. So that brings me into, I'm going to get my Post-it board out here. That brings me into a little bit of what I want to cover called socialization and behavior modification. Now, socialization takes place when a puppy is between I can't talk now, between birth and 16 weeks old. There is a very short window there of about 4 months where we can do what is called socialization. Sorry, reminders on my computer. And in that window, that puppy is like a sponge. Like it just soaks up everything, and there is no fear for the most part, and they just like go on and on and on, and they want to explore, and everybody's their best friend. And yeah, that starts at birth. So if you're getting a rescue, or if you're getting a puppy from an Amish place, some Amish places are good. I'm not saying all are bad, but there are some really bad ones out there. Or if you're getting a puppy from a unknown breeder, you need to be very careful about what you're doing here, because if that puppy is outside of that 16-week window, or excuse me, if they've already had bad experiences with things, then we need to look at something we call behavior modification and not socialization. Socialization is built on creating a world that the puppy knows as everything is good, and we want to keep it that way. Now, let me make sure you can see. So we have socialization from birth to 16 weeks. Now, there is something called the first fear period. And depending on your dog, this can take place anywhere between 9 weeks and well, I've seen this go all the way up to 5 months. So I'm going to put 5 months in there, but 5 months is really the extreme side of it. Usually it's over by 16 weeks to 18 weeks, somewhere in there. (16 to 18 normal weeks. I can't write. Okay. So that takes us up to about middle puppyhood or so. If you need help with this, the last thing you want to do is create more fear in that dog. So I would strongly advise you to get a hold of a trainer, a vet behaviorist, or a behaviorist who knows how to handle this correctly, because to create more fear when a puppy is going through this is going to create aggression. I'm just telling you up front, whether it happens now or whether it happens later in their life, it will happen. So after we get through the first fear period, we're going to deal with kind of normal puppyhood. And that happens from about 4 to 5 months all the way up to about 9 months. So you got a couple window or a little bit of window in there where you're going to have some fun with your puppy. And your puppy's going to go back to being that sponge and wanting to please you and do everything, depending on the breed. And they're just fun at that age. Still a lot of work, but fun. Once we get out of the 9-month range, again, depending on your dog, because every dog is different, you're going to do the second fear period. And this runs from about 9 months to about 15 months. Some shorter, some longer. Again, depends on the dog. That second fear period, this is the big one. This is where phobias actually develop. So if you have a dog, and what happens is you'll have a perfectly normal puppy, not scared of anything, wants to run up, greet everybody, wants to, see everybody in the world, wants to run up to every tree and smell it, and every animal and smell it, and every dog and play with it. To a dog that is suddenly afraid of your detergent bottle, or suddenly afraid of the ball that he's played with for forever. Or maybe you have a statue in your living room or a big vase that's been there all of his life since he's been in the house, and all of a sudden he's afraid of it. That's the second fear period. Easy way to handle it most of the time. And if you've been training all the way through here, you know how to handle it if you've had the right trainer, because that trainer will have also been teaching you how to help your dog. If it's handled incorrectly or used fear-based methods to deal with, that's when the phobias develop. That's when the anxiety develops. That's when the aggression develops. So this is a very touchy age for dogs. Now I'm going to come back to this where I talk a little bit more about this. And what I'm going to talk about doesn't just apply to the second fear period, but also applies to fear in dogs in general. Okay, so after we get through the second fear period, you hit the most trying time in your dog's life. I'm just going to tell you right now. You hit the teenage years. And that runs from anywhere between 12 months to about 2 years. So you have a whole year of fun and games with your new teenage dog. The hallmark of this is that you will have a dog that suddenly decides he's not going to do what you asked him to do, when all along he's been absolutely Johnny on the spot. You tell him sit, he sits. Now you're going to get a dog that looks at you when you tell him to sit and says, do I really want to do that? And that sits. Or doesn't. You're going to think that your dog may have lost his mind and all of his training during the teenage years, especially if they're lab. I love labs. I have 2. But yeah. So again, this might be another time where you enlist the help of a trainer. Dogs at this age are much like people at this age. Their mind is switching from puppy brain to adult brain, and it's making all kinds of synapses in order to be able to do that, and it's growing at a very fast rate. So if you think of a teenage child or a human teenager, it's pretty much just like a dog teenager. Same behaviors. Only without all of the reasoning capabilities. Now, they come out of this and they're fully formed adult dogs, which is great. That's when you can finally like breathe the sigh of relief, and you will know when that happens. Trust me, you will know. But the other thing that happens during teenage years is sexual maturity. So this is a question that I get a lot. When do I think dogs should be neutered or spayed? And my answer is always listen to your vet, do what your vet says. But it depends. For smaller breeds, it is much better, much okayer, is that even a word, to neuter or spay them at a younger age. Their bones are not growing as big, they're not growing as fast, and it is okay for them to not have those hormones. Bigger dogs, we're talking anywhere from your boxers, labs, retrievers, to all the way up to, you know, your Irish wolfhounds. You may not want to get them neutered or spayed until they are 2 to 3 years old. Now, that doesn't have anything to do with heat cycles or anything like that. What it does have to do is joint closure and bone density. So puppies, when they are just little itty bitty things, their bones are very soft and very malleable. It is very possible to break a puppy's bone, but it is a little bit harder to do because they are so squishy. And part of the reason that they're so squishy is because if you look at an x-ray of a puppy's joint, like here's your socket and here's your ball, they're going to be way out here like this. Like they're not even together. And as they grow, these slowly close until they're an actual operating joint, like a normal dog, like an adult dog. That's when you know they're done growing also. The bigger breeds, they need those hormones to help with bone density or bone hardening, but they also need it to help bring those joints together correctly, and fully firm all of that up. So if you spay or neuter them too soon and those bones are still out here, there is research showing that you risk osteoarthritis later on in their years because you didn't let those bones grow and close with all those hormones that they needed. Now, there are indications where I always say, yeah, go get them neutered, go get them spayed. One is aggression in females. Believe it or not, female dogs actually can have PMS. Kid you not. And that is a very real thing. They become aggressive, they become moody, they become just like a whole nother dog. Okay, varying degrees of that, but you know what I mean. In that case, I would absolutely recommend going and getting your dog spayed. She will be much happier, you will be much happier, and all of that problem goes away. For boy dogs, marking, humping, if it's a consistent issue, yep, go get them spayed or go get them neutered. It's not worth you trying to fix that habit later on. Let's just not let it get to be a habit when it's easily fixable. There's some indications that maybe it's time we look at getting spayed or neutered. There's a myth out there that male dogs getting neutered will help with aggression. Yes and no, but females also have testosterone. And we see aggression in females much more often than we see aggression in males. So it makes you wonder, is there really truth to that? Probably not. In addition, you will see it takes about 6 weeks for all those hormones to get out of their system. So it's not like there's a sudden drop off. If you've got a wild child and you're expecting neutering or spaying to curb that behavior, it's not going to happen. Trust me. And you still have to wait for those hormones to get out of the system before you see what kind of dog you have left. There will be no drastic personality changes. I guarantee it. I apologize for my coughing. The air is dry. So let's talk for a minute about, I'm going to go back to that second fear period before we close up. So let's picture for ourselves an iceberg. Okay, this is my iceberg. Can I draw beautifully? Ooh, oh. Okay, my iceberg. Now, there's a dotted line. This is where you see this above the surface, right? But there's all this below the surface in an iceberg. When you use fear-based, excuse me, when you use fear-based methodologies, all you're treating is this up here. It's called suppression. The dog learns not to do that behavior, or it's going to have something unpleasant happen to it. And what happens is all this under the surface, it keeps building over time. Every time it's in that situation where it can't act in a manner that's in accordance with its emotions, or it can't get away from something and it's afraid of it, that builds this under the surface. So there's going to be one day where your dog, if it's trained that way to deal with behavior issues, is going to explode, and you're not going to like it. The way that we train when it comes to behavior issues is we treat this under the surface first. And in order to do that, we have to find the underlying cause. So let's say your dog is afraid of men, specifically men in hats with beards. You've got 3 known generalized triggers that most dogs are afraid of at this stage. Men in hats, men with beards. Sunglasses is another one. So we have to step way back and start treating at the beginning with just men. No hats, no beards, no sunglasses, just men. And we have to we have to change their negative association with that to a positive association. And it's just like in a human. If you have a human that has a fear of elevators, you have to take it one step at a time. You have to walk up to the elevator and then walk away. And then once you're comfortable with that, you have to step a foot in the elevator and then walk away. Training a dog with behavior issues is the same premise. So we start with this. And when we do that, what happens is this up here magically disappears because they have no need to act out. These emotions, they're gone. So they don't need to act out this tip of the iceberg. That's the big difference between traditional methods and what we use, science-backed methods or force-free methods. They're the same thing. that's a lot of what I wanted to talk to you today in a nutshell. This is, let's see, this is January 10th, 2020 until January 14th, 2020. We are running a special on all of our training. If you use the discount code SALE22, you can get $50 off. You know, what I've explained to you is not what I would say general trainer knowledge, but it is something that all of our trainers understand and can use and practice. That is why we cost a little bit more than everybody else. You know, you don't hire a plumber that doesn't know how to plumb, or you don't hire a dog trainer that doesn't know how to dog train. Yeah, so that's my spiel. If you have questions, please get a hold of us. We're happy to answer questions. And, you know, you can use our phone number, 888-717-7772. You can email me directly, Michelle with 1L at posibleangels.org. You can use the contact form on our website at posibleangels.org. Hey, you know, there's lots of ways. We look forward to hearing from you, and hopefully you learned something. Thank you. Bye.